Welcome, everybody. We are glad to have you in the room today. Yeah, it's not a real round table. We're not in person. We can't see you face to face. But what we can do is see you virtually. And we have an opportunity of interacting with you, having a great conversation with our friend, Alan Parr. More on him in just a moment. But a welcome to each and every one of you who right now, as a pastor, are attempting to figure out how to navigate the Christmas season. You've got family, you've got friends, you've got parties you're supposed to be at, you've got sick people in the church. You have people who are really upset that you're not having Christmas service live and in person, or people that expect you to have 4 Christmas Eve services and 3 Christmas Day services. Also love your family and don't lose them. So there's a lot of pressures that you're facing right now, and everybody's an expert on your job. We are thankful that you've taken a moment to escape from all of that pressure and just have a conversation with some pastor friends today. Today, we are going to have a great time in preparation for our Christmas season by talking about burnout and how to actually thrive in your ministry without burning out from your ministry. And we're going to be talking about who's going to be sharing that and more on that conversation in just a moment. Before we go any further, I'm going to throw it over to my pal, my partner, Jeremy Rands.
Hey guys, it's good to see you today. I am looking forward to this conversation as well. I saw Thomas Osterkamp. Is he on here? See if I can find him. He is going to be with us at the summit, and I'm looking forward to seeing him again there. Thomas, would you open in prayer for us today? Ask the Lord's blessing on this round table.
Yeah, most definitely. Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for another opportunity to gather together as ministry leaders. Great responsibility, but an awesome privilege, Lord. And I do pray that you be with all the ministry leaders who are on the call today. As Josh mentioned, there's a lot of different opinions and ideas of what we ought to do this time of year, God, but just pray that your spirit would settle in our hearts, what you want us to do at each of our congregations, Lord, and may we live to please you. Be with the conversation today, talking about burnout, Lord, something you've helped me to overcome and come through, and pray that this conversation be a help to the guys who are here today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Jeremy, Josh, and Thomas. It's good to see you guys today for another virtual roundtable. We are 48 days out from being at the summit together in Dallas, Texas. I hope you have your tickets purchased and booked for that. If you're an Idea Network member, which obviously if you're on the call today, you get 30% off registration for that. The price will go up. Your percentage won't go down, but you will get less of a discount if you don't sign up sooner than later. I think the price goes up here in about a week or so, but we've got 48 days until we're together in Dallas. Hope that you guys are going to be able to join us for that. You can register online, go to our website. There's a membership code we send out each week on the weekly newsletter, and it gets you 30% off for coming and joining us there. We're going to have a lot of fun in Dallas. Josh Tice will be there. Brian Sams will be there. Dr. Tony Evans will be there. And then Alan Parr is our guest today. He's going to be joining us in Dallas, Texas. I'm excited to hear him today talk about burnout. I'm going to throw it over to Josh to introduce Alan. And then after the talk today, while he's speaking, if you guys have any questions for him, something he says that you want more clarity on, or you want to bounce a question off of Alan, we've booked him for the whole hour today. He's going to be with us. Write your question down, throw it in the chat. And then after his talk today, we'll get back to some Q&A, asking him some questions, and I always enjoy the discussion. Josh, I'm going to throw it over to you to say a little bit more about Alan.
Yeah, Alan is a great guy, become a friend of mine. He has been in the ministry for now over 20 years and actually was not in the ministry immediately out of school. I believe he was an engineer. Is that right, Alan? If that's true, give me a thumbs up. Yeah, that's what he was, an engineer, and then went into ministry. And God has now used him to become a YouTube teacher of the Word of God, which, if you asked me even 10 years ago, I thought, no way, don't want to hear a YouTube teacher of the Word of God. But Alan Parr is the premier in a lot of ways, in my opinion. He teaches on a weekly basis over nearly 1 million subscribers, which is fascinating. He's also the author of 5 Keys to Unlocking Your Purpose. You can download that book at his website for free. You can follow his YouTube channel, The Beat, and you can learn a lot about 1 Corinthians. They're in the current series right now. Alan is called The Church Gone Wild. Commentaries are out. YouTube is in. Follow Alan Parr to find out what 1 Corinthians is all about. Our friend, our pal, Alan Parr. Alan, would you take it away?
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Josh. And once again, it's great to be back. I think I was here several months back, and just honored to be here and super excited to hopefully meet several of you, hopefully all of you, in just a few short weeks here in Dallas, Texas, which is where I live. So right around the corner from me, this is my stomping grounds. So I want to talk about something today that I'm going to be going into way more depth at the end of January at the summit, but it's this idea of burnout and balance. And I want to start with a little bit of a story. If you are kind of wired like me, you're kind of a type A, ambitious, go get 'em kind of guy, you might relate to this type of schedule. So I got married in 2015. And when I got married, let me see if I can keep up with all the things I was doing. Okay, I was a high school math teacher. So that was about 50 hours of my week or so. I was also on staff part-time at my local church, and as a worship leader at a branch campus, and that was taking about 20 hours of my week. And because I was not getting paid for that position at the church, that's a whole nother story, but guys, do the best to take care of people who serve you. But in that situation, I just wasn't. And so I was trying to make some extra money, and I was tutoring in the evenings when I wasn't at church in the evenings. And I can remember my very first year of being married. I cannot recall, outside of maybe some holidays, this is my first year being married. I don't recall having any time where I actually got a chance to sleep in with my wife in the morning. I mean, I'm having to be at school at 7 a.m. to teach high school math. On Saturday mornings, we were required to do outreach and go to different apartments and pass out invitations to come to the church. And then on Sunday morning, we were doing the tabernacle ministry, which I'm sure many of you can relate to, where you're tearing down and setting up, because we were doing church out of a hotel, at least at this branch campus. And it was just killing me. And so we gave birth to our first child in 2017. And so thankfully, I was able to quit my job as a high school math teacher, and I started a full-time math tutoring company. And so instead of getting something off of my plate, and I think we can all relate to this, I just kind of switched what was on my plate. And that took me down a whole nother path, because now I've got a newborn child. And if you know anything about math tutoring, obviously the kids are in school during the day, so they need tutoring in the evenings. And because I'm trying to start it up, I had to do most of the tutoring in the evenings. And so now I'm away from my home, away from my newborn child, several evenings of the night, several evenings of the week. And then even when I'm home, I'm not really as present as I would like to be, because as a solo business person, you're answering the phone and taking emails and taking texts, and your phone never stops ringing, and you're the only person to be able to answer. My point is this, that I got into a situation where I was going, and I did not know how to slow down. And my wife came to me, and I'll never forget this. It was a pivotal change moment in our marriage as well as in our ministry. And I'll never forget this. And some of you may have had this conversation with your wives. She said, listen, if you're going to survive in ministry and ultimately in marriage, in our marriage, and be a loving father and a present father and a loving husband, something has got to change. Something has got to change, because we don't see you, you're gone. And basically, I feel like I'm just kind of, in this by myself. And it's one of those defining pivotal moments in our marriage and in my ministry, where I said, wow, I didn't even realize how hard I was going. I was just trying to go, and everything I was doing was good stuff. And so that's how we kind of justify it as men and type A type of personality. So I want to talk about just three things that after that conversation, I have done my best to try to implement to try to find more balance, be a better husband, a more present father, and ultimately a better ministry leader as well. And let me just start off, before I share these three things, let me start off by saying that this is something that I'm not going to claim that I've mastered these things. This is something that I have to continue to work on every day. This is something that my natural bent is to work and do more and more. But this is something that I have to rein myself in on a consistent basis. So I'm going to kind of share my screen, and I've got a little presentation that I just put together to kind of guide my conversation with you. Can you guys see that screen? Okay. Okay. Awesome. All right. Awesome. So avoiding burnout and achieving balance. So the first thing that I had to do, that I would encourage us all to do, is to measure your motives, And what I mean by that is essentially, I had to take a good look at myself and ask myself, why am I going at this pace? What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? Is there something empty in me? Is there something that is there something void in my life that is causing me to push and push? Am I getting my ego stroked in some way? Am I driven by success? Because at the end of the day, I control my schedule. Especially in my position as an entrepreneur and as a minister, as a YouTube person, I control my own schedule. So sometimes whenever I look at my schedule at the beginning of the week, or at the beginning of the month, I'm already getting stressed out. And I can also stress the people around me out, including my team, because I have said yes to everything, right? And I've said yes to speaking engagements. I've said yes to all different types of things, more projects, more online courses for our ministry, more YouTube channel videos, you name it. And at the end of the day, I've had to ask myself, why am I going at this pace? Like, what is it that, why am I stressing myself out, my wife, my home, and my team? Is there something about my motives that might be misplaced? And sometimes as ministry leaders, we are so desiring of success and growth, and we see other churches growing down the street, or in my case, I see other YouTube channels or other online ministries growing, and there's something that might fuel me to say, hey, you know what? I got to push harder. If I just push harder, if I just work harder, if I just crank out a little bit more, then maybe I can achieve the growth that I want, or the growth I see someone else having. And I've really had to ask myself and measure my motives, right? We're really hungry for success. We're really hungry for growth. And we have to go back and ask ourselves why. What is driving this insatiable desire to see this growth? And what I found is that when we have this desire to this unhealthy desire to grow, because there's nothing wrong with wanting to grow, but the unhealthy is it can often lead to misplaced priorities, strained relationships, and poor health. Misplaced priorities, right? When you consistently having to say no to your family, or you can't remember the last time you took your wife out on a date, or you're missing important milestones or important things going on in your family, and you're pretty much, it's hard for your spouse or your wife to say, no, I don't want you to do that, because it's ministry, it's helping people, it's good things, it's exciting things. But it can, over time, I've learned that it can strain relationships. And my wife and I have had to work hard at trying to make sure that my aggressive ministry schedule does not strain our relationship and cause her to feel like I'm married to the ministry, not her, or that ministry is more important than her. Even poor health. Over the past year, as I mentioned, a couple things that I've done in just a moment, I have tried to prioritize my health. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but there was a time during COVID where I was 35 pounds overweight. And it's just because I was just going. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't eating right. I wasn't resting. I wasn't doing any of the things that would lead to a better, healthy state, because I was so driven. And it's so hard for us, guys, because we love what we do. And it's so hard for us to say no to what we love doing and where we find our affirmation. So instead, I just encourage us to do a few things. First of all, you know, I'm now, and these are things I'm doing. I'm not saying you have to do, I'm saying these are things that I'm doing to try to mitigate the burnout and experience a little bit more balance in my life. I've got a schedule that I exercise 5 times a week. That's non-negotiable. Even if some of those exercises is taking a walk around my neighborhood for an hour, where I'm thinking about ministry, I'm thinking about what I'm going to teach on, I'm thinking about my next YouTube video, or I'm just putting on my favorite worship music and I'm spending intimate time with God several times a week. And at the same time, I'm taking care of my physical temple. So that's one of the things that I've done. Another thing is eating healthy. I will tell you guys that for 45 years, I had the worst eating habits, worse than any of you here, I can guarantee. I mean, eating pizza at 9 o'clock at night. My wife and I would sit in the bed and I would eat Bluebell ice cream and watch Netflix at 10 o'clock at night. And it was a reward. It was a reward system. It was, hey, you know, you worked hard, you deserve this. You work hard, you deserve to enjoy something at the end of the day. And that's how I saw food. I just ate and ate and ate. And I was on what they call that seafood diet. If I saw the food, I ate it. I didn't even think about it, right? And I've made some significant changes. I lost 35 pounds. Now I'm eating way healthier. I'm exercising 5 times a week. Rest. I used to be one of those people that I thought I could get by with 5 to 6 hours a night of rest. And I was slowly burning out, right? Because my charge was down and I was slowly kind of, my body was not refueling itself. So now I'm committed to 7 to 8 hours of rest per night. And then finally, things like boundaries around my family time, putting the phone away, putting it in a different room, turning off my notifications, instituting the Netflix night for my wife every Wednesday night. And we don't do this every Wednesday, but it's on the calendar most Wednesdays. We try to get our kids down by about 7:30, 8 o'clock so we can have some time to watch a show, watch a movie, and spend some time together. And that's intentional. It's literally on my calendar. And all this stuff got to be on our calendar, guys. We have to put it on our calendar so that it becomes a habit, and so that becomes a priority for us. So that's the first thing that I would say is measuring our motives. But then the second thing I would say, if we're wanting to avoid burnout and achieve balance, is not only measuring our motives, but incorporating rhythms of rest. Rhythms of rest. And for many of us, rest is a curse word. It's just like, what are you talking about? I've got too much to do. I've got too many things to do. My to-do list is, if I don't work, my team's going to fall apart. My ministry is going to fall apart. My team's not going to know what to do. They depend on me. Or I've got, if I don't do this, then something else that I need to do is not going to be done or done well. So I don't have time to rest. And I'll confess to you guys, that was me. That was me until I started to incorporate a Sabbath in my week. And I'm sure for many of you, this is not anything new, but it might be a reminder, or maybe you've set this as something you said you wanted to do, but you got off track, or maybe you're thinking about it and you're like, well, I don't know if I can do that. Well, let me tell you, I now take every Friday as a Sabbath. Now, I don't observe it like legalistically, okay, because we're New Testament Christians. And I don't observe it like the Old Testament Jews, or even like some of our Seventh-day Adventist friends. But I take every Friday. And when I start thinking about the principle of rest in the Bible, there's really a couple things that come to mind. First of all, it's a test of faith, right? Exodus 16:23, he told them, this is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow will be a day of Shabbat, right? Complete rest, a holy Sabbath day set apart for the Lord. So bake or boil as much as you want today and set aside what is left for tomorrow. And the idea behind this is God was challenging the people, hey, do you trust me that if you take one day out of the week and you cease from working, that I will still provide for you? Or do you feel like you have to do it because you don't trust that if you stop working, if you cease, that that something is going to fall through the cracks? And it was really a test. And what was interesting is that as we all know, there was this thing called the Sabbath year. Imagine that, where every 7 years they would not plow their ground, they would not harvest. So the land actually got a chance to rest for the year as well. Imagine telling people today, shut your business down for a year. Trust God, right, to provide for you. And so it was a test of faith. Do I trust God, right, to provide for me if I shut things down? I recently came back from Israel. I had a 10-day pilgrimage to Israel, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had in my entire life. And if you've ever been there, you'll know that from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday, the entire country is shut down. Like it's a ghost town. You don't see cars on the road, very few cars on the road. I mean, it's very serious. I learned some things there that I didn't even realize. Like, you can't even turn a light on because that's considered work. As a matter of fact, we went over to the home of a Jewish family and we had a Shabbat dinner on Friday night. And when she opened up the refrigerator, there was no light. I said, well, what's wrong with your refrigerator? She says, no. We put a piece of tape over the little lever that if you open the refrigerator would turn the light on, because if we turn the light on the Sabbath, that's considered work. I mean, it's really, really serious. They take it very seriously, obviously too seriously, as legalistic. But the point is, there's something about rest. Not only was it a sign of faith, a test of faith, but it was a sign of faith. Moses says, tell the people of Israel, God says, tell the people of Israel, be careful to keep my Sabbath day, for the Sabbath is a sign of the covenant between me and you from generation to generation. It is given so you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy. The idea is this. He says, hey, I want you to be different. I want this sign between me and you to distinguish my people from all the other nations who might work and do things around the clock. He says, hey, you are to be different. You are to honor me. You are to take one day out of 7 and just rest. And I think that's applicable for us because our society tells us to work. It's all about the hustle culture. But how are we going to be different and establish a rhythm of rest so that we can let our body refuel? So there's a few things that I recommend that I've been doing on Sabbath that I would encourage you to do. And for me, my Sabbath is Friday. Friday morning, all day Friday is my day. It's my day. This is my day. My wife knows it. My family knows it. This is my day. First and foremost, I prioritize my time with God. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the third point, but this is my chance to refuel. I spend that time with God, extra time with God on that day. Sometimes I get a massage. It's just me treating me. I'll go to a local massage place and I'll just rest and I'll get treated. I disable my notifications and put my phone on do not disturb. And of course, as you know, if you have an iPhone or whatever, you can determine which people can bypass that so that you don't miss anything important, but you don't get all these spam calls. You don't get all this extra stuff, Slack messages, emails, text messages, things like that. You don't need that on your Sabbath day. Disable all those notifications so that you're not distracted. Hobby, right? I would call this recreation. Well, if we break the word recreation down, recreation, it's allowing God to recreate you, to recreate your body, right? It's fun. It's having a good time. For me, I love to play golf. That's a day where if it's nice, you'll probably find me on the golf course or playing racquetball or playing chess with a friend. It's just something that I don't have to think about ministry. And I'm not going to think about ministry as I'm doing my hobby. And then sometimes I'll do lunch with a friend at a new restaurant. Or sometimes I just go by myself, right? And I just have a good time listening to a podcast or something of that nature. Sometimes I'll take my wife out on a date and I'll be creative and I'll plan a great date. My wife happens to stay home, so I can say, hey, honey, this Friday, I'm taking you on a date. It's a surprise. All I want you to do is just be ready to go at 9 a.m. and we're going to spend the day together. And that's our Sabbath, right? So I really want to encourage you, if you're not doing it already, to institute some rhythm of rest in your life so that you don't burn out. Sometimes I'll pick up my kids from school early and we'll do something fun as a family. So these are all things that I try to do on my day off on Friday. Yours might be Monday after a stressful day of church, but make sure that you honor it and not just have a Sabbath by name, but actual by practice. Here's oh, I'm sorry. I already talked about, I forgot I had that point. But my wife and I have a Netflix, on Sabbath, sometimes I'll have a Netflix day. Sometimes I'll just sit up there in my little man cave and I'll watch a movie or I'll watch some shows that I wanted to catch up on. And it's just rest. It's just rest. Just rest. Okay, so the third thing I want to encourage us to do, and this is so important, and then we'll be done, measuring your motives, incorporating rhythms of rest, and then a dedication to devotion. I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, I already have devotion time, right? But here's the problem that I found, that far too often our time with God turns into time with God for the people. And oh my, that is so important for us to understand. Because what I realized was that most of my quote unquote devotional time that I was spending with God was simply time that I was trying to spend with God so I could have something to preach to the people or something to say on my YouTube channel. And so the purpose isn't really to spend time with God. It's so that I can have something good and look good in front of the people to make sure I have a good word for the people. That's not devotion. That's not devotion. And so what we have to make sure that we do is we have to make sure that we are prioritizing our devotional time. And I will say this, and I'll publicly say this, and this is embarrassing, but it's true. For years, I would tell everybody else how important it was to study the Bible and read the Bible and have a consistent devotion time. Like, oh, I would hammer it home to people. I would tell people all day long. And I was the biggest hypocrite because in my life, I did not have that dedication to devotion. It was kind of up or down, spend time with God some days I didn't. Some days I would go 3 hours straight and then I'd go 4 days and I wouldn't read my Bible. And it's so embarrassing to say, but I'm just being honest. That's where I was for years until several years ago. I'll tell you what I did in just a moment. I made some changes, but I want to touch on this. As ministers, we need to be careful to minister to people out of our overflow and not our reserves. And what I mean by that is, for me, I've been to seminary. Many of you have been to Bible college or seminary, and so we know a lot. And if we wanted to, we could stand in front of the people and we could preach a sermon because we have reserves. We have reserved knowledge. We have other sermons we can pull from. We can pull from this sermon, that sermon. We could put something together and we can look really good. But the people that have discernment will be able to tell that we haven't spent time with God or we're not spending time. Not everybody better tell. We'll be able to fool some people, but some people will be able to tell my pastor's not spending time. Because you know what? When you are spending time with God, there's a certain level of overflow that you're preaching from because you have been in the presence of God so much that what you're giving the people is just a reflection of your overflow and not just reserves of the past 10, 15 years of ministry and sermons that you have in your mind, and you can kind of regurgitate those things. And so we need to make sure that we're careful to make sure that we're ministering to people out of our overflow. The illustration that I typically use is there's a difference between an iPhone and a power drill. An iPhone will work perfectly even if it's on 1%. You can still check your messages, you can still check your phone, you can still make phone calls, you can still watch YouTube videos. There's no difference between your iPhone or your smartphone at 1% or 100%. It works just the same. Power drill, not so much. If it's not fully powered, it's not going to work as well. It might still work, but it won't work as well. Guys, we're more like power drills. If we're not plugged into our source on a regular basis, we can work, but we won't work as well. We won't work as well. And so one of the things, the last thing I think I have to say is that one of the things that I've been incorporating in my life for the past 4 years that's been an absolute game changer for me is doing a daily audio Bible. It's an app. I'm sure many of you are well familiar with this, but I love it because I can listen to the Bible being read. The plan is already laid out for me. The guy that reads it, his name is Brian Hardin. He not only reads the Bible in dramatic fashion, but he also gives commentary on the Bible every single day, fresh every day. So he doesn't repeat years. You're not listening to a recording. You're listening to him reading it in 2022, 2023. And so this has been a game changer for me because I listen to it when I'm walking and I can kill two birds at one stone. I can walk, take care of my temple. I can get my Bible in, and I'm not trying to prepare any sermons. I'm just reading or listening to the word of God from me. So guys, I just want to kind of end there. And I really want to encourage us to have some discussion around this. And I would love to know how you all are doing and whether you have anything to add to this idea of burnout. Measure your motives. Why are you pushing so hard in your team? And why are you going hard 100 miles an hour? Is there something that's driving you that maybe you don't know, can't see? Maybe you have a blind spot. And then incorporate a rhythm of rest in your life. Just put it on the calendar and commit to it. And then rededicate yourself to having that personal devotion time with God. So those are just a few tips that I found that have really, really made a huge difference in my life. And I'm still working through to make sure that I'm implementing all these things in my life. So I'll turn it back to you, Josh, and we can have discussions or Q&A or whatever you guys want to talk about next.
Hey, thanks, Alan. That was really good and practical and helpful. That is a topic that every one of us either has dealt with, or if we haven't, we very soon will. And so, Alan, thank you so much for investing into us and sharing that. I want to turn it over to you guys. Let's get some discussion going around the topic today. Any questions that you guys have got just right at the onset of this discussion for Alan specifically about our topic today? Who wants to start?
I think Mike's got a question.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, Alan, what do you do, or how do you deal with when you got some distractions going on for your rhythms of rest and you're trying to keep that in perspective, but yet, the backside of your mind is like it's still there. How do you deal with that? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. That's a good question. What I try to do is I try to let all the I want to say important people, but you think you know what I mean. All the people that potentially might be tempted to reach out to me, I let them know that, hey, as you know, this is my Friday. This is what I'm trying to do. Please only reach out if it's something that's an emergency, something that, you absolutely need me for. And I found that, for the most part, either A, my team gets it, or B, whatever they're reaching out for, it's legitimate. And that's the reason why I say, we're not in the Old Testament anymore. We're not, it's this legalistic type of thing. No, it's just a general principle that I try to follow. But yeah, there's going to be distractions. There's going to be things that come, but quite frankly, unless when you say distraction, are you talking about stuff that's still on your mind that you're like, man, I'm
Yeah.
trying to enjoy this day off, but like I keep thinking about a million things I have to do.
Sometimes that, or like even if you know there is, maybe family issues going on with your kids. I've got
Oh, yeah.
spectrum from 5 to like up to 19. Or, there's something that's just very prevalent going on. It's just hard to shut it down.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Now, see, for those types of things, I wouldn't necessarily stray away from those things. The biggest thing that I'm trying to avoid doing on my Sabbath is working, thinking about work, planning about work, obsessing about what I have to do, worrying about if I don't do this, then, what's going to happen to this, that, and the other. Those are the things I'm trying to distract. But clearly, we still have responsibilities. The world doesn't stop just because Alan Parr wants to take a day off and take a Sabbath. So obviously, my family comes first on that day. But thankfully, most of the time, I think we'll find that, for the most part, those distractions or emergencies are few and far in between, hopefully. Yeah. Great question. Yeah.
Good question, Mike. I want to go to Tim Wilcox. Tim, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Sure, Alan, just want to find out how you prioritize what's at the top of the list on the weekly, daily type activities.
Yeah. One of the things I really try to do is look at, what must absolutely be done this week and make sure that I'm doing that. Another thing I ask myself is, what is it that if I don't do these things, I'm slowing my team down? Because that's a huge thing. I have to lead by example. I can't expect them to be diligent with their work when I'm always late with my things. And my team, it's heavily dependent upon me because I create the videos. And so I have to choose the topics. If I don't choose the topics, then we don't shoot videos. If we don't shoot videos, my video editor can't edit the video. If he doesn't edit the video, then my graphic designer can't create the graphics or the thumbnail. It's so many things that depend on me. So I have to make sure that the first priority for me is things that absolutely have to be done. And then also what do I have to do so that my team won't be held back? And then another thing that I've been doing during the week, which has been a huge game changer for me, I don't know if any of you all do this, is I've selected one day of the week for all my meetings, Wednesday. Because before my administrative assistant was putting meetings on my calendar all the time on various times. And it was messing with my creative time. I couldn't create because I was always being distracted with another Zoom meeting, another call, another this, another that. Now my Wednesdays are crazy because I've got Zoom meetings packed from 8 a.m. all the way to about 4. But that's the only day of the week that I'm meeting with people, period. The other days I'm in creation mode. And that's been a huge helper for me.
Good questions. Who wants to go next? All right, I've got one, Alan. So I think Josh Tice is this way. I think with the YouTube videos I've watched from you, you guys are so creative, but when you get a creative block and you're like, oh man, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know where to go next. Like it could be writer's block, creativity block, whatever. Like you're just in a fog over where do I want to go next? Are there specific things that you will do, whether it's on a Sabbath or otherwise, to kind of get yourself out of that funk into, hey, oh, this is where I want to go? What do you do when your creative side kind of hits a little bit of a roadblock?
Yeah. So for me, what I try to do is I try to consume a bunch of other content, because I'm sure like many of you, sometimes once I start consuming other content, ideas for what I want to do and talk about start to emerge like crazy. So sometimes I'm like, God, I don't really know what I want to talk about. And I'll pick a book off my shelf that I probably should have read a long time ago. I'll just start reading that book. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can get a sermon right here. Here's a video right here, and that happens so often for me. Or I'll start watching YouTube videos and I'll be like, oh, you know what? I can do a video on that, but I can say it a little differently than he did. And then finally, just taking myself into a different environment. Like I said, walking, going to the park, going to the library, sometimes a change of scenery, getting out of my office can really spark some creativity for me as well.
Nice.
I'll jump in on that since you you mentioned my name. Yeah, I love the change of scenery. That's a huge help. I love the idea of looking at other content. I'll do the same thing. Really, guys, one of the biggest, let's say sermon creation, you might think to yourself, man, like, where am I going to go over the next few months? You can cheaply buy into the sermons.com memberships and just block off an hour and a half of you scrolling through other people's sermon slides and sermon graphics. Just doing that, some of you think that that's some sort of a cheat code that you found out that nobody else knows. No, it's what we all should be doing. Because as you're going through, you're like, that's a great idea. Now I would design it this way, or I might use this word rather than that word. But even the concept of the design can throw into your mind an idea for a sermon, because you were just reading in the book of Hosea and you're like, that concept is actually more from Hosea than it is from Jude. I'm going to use that. And then you can take it to a designer. So going through other people's content has been a big thing. The one creative thing that I learned years ago that's really helpful, I used to carry around a little notebook. Now I just have a notes app. And every time I think of a creative idea, I'll stop whatever conversation I'm in and I'll say, could you hold on a second? And I'll write it down right there. And that was something I learned from, I think, like some stand-up comedian like Jerry Seinfeld or something. Yeah, see, exactly.
All of these are video ideas.
Yeah. So if you don't have a note open that has like funny stories that happen to you, good sermon series idea, good sermon idea, a weird thing happened to you at Starbucks the other day, all that should go in a note so that when you're lost creativity, go to a file that has all of your own creative ideas and you just open it up and be like, oh, I forgot about that weird thing that my son said to me like 8 weeks ago. And you can pull that out. That's been a huge help to me.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Good stuff. All right. Who else wants to jump in? Yeah, Joe, I see you. Go ahead.
So I posted this in the chat, and I'm glad I get a chance to ask it, because as I read it, it's not going to do good. But Alan, when you were going through that time, burnout, like things have got to change. Sometimes the hardest part is that click. So in those moments, what's the best way to work hard at not really working hard? Because it really is a big thing. It's a fearful thing. It's a scary thing. It's an anxiety thing. So in your context, how did that work?
Well, for me, that's an easy one, because, what I started realizing was that, my wife just wasn't, we were not on the verge of divorce or anything like that. Never that close, but she wasn't happy because, I was never home. I was always working hard. And so when I started thinking about it, I was like, okay, I can either, try to make all this money for our family and try to, build this YouTube channel that's like, blowing up and all this, but at what expense? At what expense? Like, to have my wife who feels like, she doesn't have her husband, and I'm always upstairs, even after the kids go to sleep, I'm upstairs working and she's going to bed by herself, and we're disconnected emotionally. We're not connected. And, and it's like, I can assume all day, well, we're solid. We're not, nothing's going to happen with us. We're good. We're both Christian, mature. We're good. But no, over time, those deposits or lack thereof can have a huge, issue, detriment to our relationship. And so when I started thinking about, man, what do I really want to be remembered as? How do I want my wife to, how do I want people to see me? I don't want people to say, oh, he had a great YouTube channel. I want my wife to say he was a loving husband. He was present. He was a great dad. So basically, to make a long story short, is I had to look at my priorities, and I had to say, you know what? At the end of the day, growing on YouTube has got to come third or fourth on my list. It just has to. Yeah.
So what was that moment like? That moment just was like, okay, I came to, because it's almost more scary. It's almost like it's worse where you're at than even the fear of where you're moving. in that moment? Was it a time of prayer? Was it just a time of like, I'm just so sick of this? Like, that's where you decided things were going to change. What was that moment like?
Well, it was a moment of, first and foremost, it was a moment of surprise because I didn't quite realize that I was going that hard because I love what I do. So I was just going, and I didn't even realize that, my pace was having an effect on my wife and those who I love. I mean, it even extends beyond my wife. My mom and dad are getting older. I should be spending time with them before they leave this earth. I wasn't spending time with them because I was always working. And, you can tell this, and I'll say this real quick. Sometimes you can tell that you're working too hard because of the way other people respond to you. So my mom would always say, well, every time she would call me, she'd say, well, I know you're busy. I don't want to hold you. And I'm like, well, geez, man, I feel so bad. Even my mom, when she calls, she knows I'm busy, almost too busy for her. So she tries to quickly kind of share whatever she needs to share because she doesn't want to take up my time. See, people will start to interact with you in that way. And that's when you know something is off because people see me as busy all the time. So the first answer is it was surprising. But the second one, it was relieving because I was almost very thankful for my wife, for God using her to be the vessel to help me understand the pace that I was going at was just unhealthy. Because if she wouldn't have said something, I mean, who knows? I'd still maybe be going at that pace and maybe I would have had a physical heart attack by now or something like that. So I'm just thankful for her.
Yeah, Steve, go ahead.
Hey, Alan. Hey, appreciate the content, man. It's good stuff. I wanted to just ask you how this day impacts your actual work week. I know we're focusing on getting the rest and what we're doing on the rest, but tell us how doing this, cutting off this day, investing in yourself, investing in your temple, how'd that impact your work week, man?
That's a great question. And if I'm being honest, it's really hard because I'm trying to now, and I joke, I tell my wife all this all the time because she's like, you got to honor your Sabbath, take your days. I said, I know I'm trying to do the best I can, but I'm also trying to get her to understand that now I have a 3-day work week, right? Because if Wednesday is my meeting day, you can't get anything done when you're on Zoom all day. So that's not a day you can work. So you got Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and I'm taking off on Friday. And I'm trying to be a present, active dad, coaching my kids' soccer team on Saturday and going to church on Sunday and watching football and doing all the rest of the stuff. So what I've had to do is be very, very intentional with how I spend my time. My wife understands that, my work day is probably going to have to extend to about 6 o'clock. And I've also been trying, I stink at this, but I've been trying to also discipline myself to get up at 5. So that I can actually get more stuff done. I struggle getting up. I mean, it's a stronghold in my life. I like to sleep in, but it's because I go to bed too late. But if I could discipline myself to go to bed at 9 or 10, I can get up at 5, then I've extended my workday. And then if I'm just being honest, not trying to be legalistic, but my wife, because she sees the effort I've made, she gives me sometimes a little bit on Saturday afternoon, time to go to the library and work things. Kids are, they're resting, playing their video games. My son's soccer game is over. She's probably watching something on TV. I have time to work. I can take, 2 or 3 hours and get caught up on things and really set myself up for the next week. So I've got to find pockets of time and be very intentional with how I spend my time when I'm working and delegate more. That's huge. Delegating almost everything I could possibly delegate to my team instead of getting bogged down on all these tasks that I really don't need to do that somebody else on my team could be doing. That's been a huge one for me.
Awesome. What else? Who else wants to jump in with a question?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Alan, you've kind of shared a few of the signs of burnout coming on, but for some guys who've never been all the way down that road, it can be hard to notice some of the early signs. So can you kind of just share with us some of those things that, hey, we need to be watching out for, and if we start to see these things, we really need to kind of evaluate the direction we're going and what's going on?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I think the first thing is when you are starting to feel like what you do is a burden, and you're just you're beaten down emotionally and physically, and you don't really enjoy what you're doing as much anymore because you're burnt out, you're tired, you're spent. You're spent emotionally, and ministry is not supposed to be like that. Thankfully, I'm in a season now where, even though I've been doing this for a long time, I'm just so energized. I love it because I'm not burnt out in this season. Maybe next week I will be, but I'm not now. So I would say, just looking at, how do you feel about your ministry right now? Do you feel kind of overwhelmed, or just kind of everything that somebody asks you to do is kind of like a burden, just a task, and it's just too much? Another thing I would say would be your energy level, right? Do you have energy to do some of the other things that, for me, I didn't whenever I was working 60, 65 hours a week. I wasn't playing racquetball. I wasn't walking. I wasn't exercising. So my energy level was way down. And so that was leading to me feeling burnt out as well. Another sign I would say is one I talked about earlier, which is if people generally feel like you don't have time for them, that is a sure sign that something is out of place, and something needs to be changed. Let me see if I can think of another one that would be a good sign that that you're just kind of burnt out. Yeah, okay. If you start to see patterns of like reward behavior, where you work really hard and you kind of feel like, I deserve this, I reward myself of this, and it might even be something sinful, like looking at inappropriate websites or something like that, or eating too much. It's because we know we're spent, we know we're burnt out, so we're trying to kind of recoup something by just kind of rewarding ourselves with some sort of little guilty pleasure to make ourselves feel good, and that's not really the ideal, right? So those are just a few things. I'm sure after this call, I'll probably think about 10 other things that I could think of about. But what about you all who have experienced that or experience it now? What are you thinking about in terms of signs of potential burnout?
Where it's no longer fun anymore, if that's the word we can use. Jeremy and I have talked about that as it relates to all sorts of types of ministry, that you could really be enjoying one aspect, or maybe you're just burnt out on another. And when there's an indication that you're just not having the joy of the Lord in the ministry, man, that's been a huge one for me to step back and say, well, I need to change things up. What about others?
Yeah.
That's a really good question that brought
It is.
about by Thomas.
Tim says impatience in the chat. I would resonate with that. I think I start to get
Yes.
really annoyed at the smallest little things.
Yes.
Frustration, impatience. That's a good one, Tim.
Yes, that is. You start getting short, irritable with people. Yep. That's a good one.
I would say the smallest things seem like a mountain that you just can't overcome.
Yes. That's a good one too. That's a real good one. Yeah. Yeah.
When you start blaming everyone else for what you can't get and what you can't have and why you're not where you want to be,
Ooh,
you put the blame everywhere else.
wow. That's powerful. Yeah.
I think when my family gets the leftovers as opposed to, the meat on the best of who I am, when I'm giving them everything I've got left, that's usually an indicator to me that, something's out of whack.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did not realize I was in burnout, and then I read a book, Didn't See It Coming by Carey Nieuwhof, just a fantastic book. And his first point is on cynicism, and I'm a people guy, and so the second that my heart started changing towards people and I started questioning their motives, I knew I was in trouble. So yeah, cynicism for me.
All right, we are running short on time. Any final words, last minute question for Alan Parr while we've got him? If you don't get it in now, you will have to wait till the summit in Dallas, Texas in a few days, a couple weeks from now.
I have one last, just being the senior pastor, how do you help your team to not give them too much? Alan, you were talking about delegation. Just how do you be careful as the senior leader to help your team?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that I will say this is that my team does not mind working really hard, but one of the things that they don't particularly care too much for is last minute changes and, you know, a whole bunch of requests and things like that weren't, because everybody works differently. You know, I can kind of thrive. I can kind of work on that, but we have people on our team that they don't do well. And I think that creates a really negative team morale when, you know, the team morale can go way down when they start feeling like, you know, now I have to take some time out of my schedule, take time away from my family because you had some new idea that you wanted to do on Sunday morning and it's now Friday. And now I've got to spend time on Saturday to adjust just because you had this new idea. And so I think that the whole planning, if we plan and give people plenty of time to work at their own pace and get things done, I found that most of the time when we do that, my team morale is good, they're happy, they're productive. But when I come up with these grand ideas, oh, let's switch this, let's do that, because it might be a little different, a little nuanced, then that's when I can start to feel my team kind of getting frustrated with me and morale starts going down and, you know, they start resenting things. So I try to limit that.
Great question, Tim. That's a good one to end on. A couple of things in the chat. Steve mentioned The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. That's a solid book. Didn't See It Coming by Newhoff is on sale with Kindle. Alan, remind us the name of your book that Josh mentioned earlier.
Well, it's just an ebook. It's the small little ebook, 18-page book called 5 Keys to Unlocking Your Purpose. You can find it on my website, alanparr.com. It should be front and center there on the homepage. So that's just a little ebook that we give away, and
we're going to share that link with our resource team to make sure that they're aware of that. And people can find you on YouTube. The Beat is the name of the YouTube channel. He's Alan Parr. He's going to be back with us for the summit at the end of January. Alan, thanks so much for investing into us today. Just such practical wisdom. We really appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming on. A couple things I've got. I threw this into the chat earlier. It's an image of our January roundtables. Again, guys, we will not meet the next 2 weeks, so do not show up the next 2 Tuesdays. Enjoy time with your family, friends. Enjoy some rest like Alan covered today. We'll be back January 3rd with our friend Dennis Fountain. He's going to be sharing some practical stuff with us. January 10th and 17th, we've got back-to-back Tice. Dave Tice on the 10th, Josh Tice on the 17th. Ryan Thompson's with us the 24th. He's not been with us live before, but he's going to share on January 24th. And then on the 31st, we'll all be in Texas. We're going to try and do a live from Dallas, Texas, like we did in Chicago and Tampa earlier this year for the Idea Days. We're going to do a live session there. And then February, we got a lot of cool stuff too. Mark Miller with Chick-fil-A is going to be back with us in March. Mark just posted something yesterday. You can join his launch team for his new book. So if you're interested, look up Mark Miller on Instagram. But yeah, thanks again to Alan for being with us today. We're excited to spend some time getting to know you in Texas in a few weeks. Thank you guys for joining us live. Have a great week. Thinking outside the box. You guys take care.